Audio Unleashed. By the way, I figured out something from talking to some of our listeners. They seem to largely have one thing in common. Most of them agree we would be a much better podcast if we would just stop talking about this one annoying thing.
What?
The problem is none of them agree on what that one annoying thing is.
Okay.
They just all agree there's one thing we should stop talking about. And if they could get together and decide what that actually is, man, though, if we listen to all of them, we would stop talking about anything.
True. But we also want to know, what is the one thing we should always talk about?
Oh, I haven't gotten any of that feedback.
Michael Fremer,
inner
I think,
detail.
would be inner detail and Michael Fremer, which are synonymous.
Absolutely. I don't think we're talking about either of those things this week, though, are we?
No. Are we recording now?
Yeah, we're recording.
This is exciting. This is kind of on the fly.
Yeah.
Improv.
Sure.
This is real radio, except it's not radio.
Aren't we always flying by the seat of our pants?
Yeah, pretty much. But we have stuff to talk about. We have
that's true.
3 things, and then a 4th thing for our Patreon subscribers. And why don't you start off? What's the first thing we're going to talk about?
We're going to talk about an article from Ted Green at Strata-gee. That's strata-gee.com. We've talked about Ted a lot. He is one of the best sort of analysts in the business with regard to how the hi-fi business actually works.
Yeah.
He's got a pretty new piece up called "Is Sonos Adrift and Directionless or on the Right Track?" I think both of us have thoughts on that matter. I don't know if we're going to agree, but I think we both agree. Well, maybe not on the right track. I don't know. We'll get into it.
Well, it's inspired by the fact that Sonos canceled what it had planned to be its big product announcement for 2025. So we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
How wise that may have been, or not wise, or whatever. Yeah. We'll have opinions about that, because that's what we do on Audio
Unleashed.
We give opinions, just like every other audio media.
Well, in your opinion, what do we talk about after that?
In my opinion, we're going to talk about, this is a YouTube video called The DAC Scam. Almost everyone believes the hype, and it's from AP Mastering. I don't know this guy's real name. This guy rubs me the wrong way. But this particular video, which I hate watched, and ended up loving.
Oh, I'm so proud of you. Using lingos the kids knows.
Yeah, but I loved it. I will. There's much I don't trust about this guy, but this was pretty great. And this is something that I think I think some of the high-end audio industry is a little bit going in this direction. People like Darko and Steven Stone are kind of, tempering their enthusiasm about DACs, and this guy's really on top of it. He actually does some real testing, some real like interactive testing with his audience and stuff. And we are going to go into that and talk about the implications of this for the high-end audio industry, if there are any. I don't know.
Yeah.
So after that, talk about cars, which you know about.
I keep telling you, man, I'm not a car guy. I'm a Corvette guy. Very different things.
Well, it's GM. This is still GM. It's all the same thing.
Yeah, well, that's true, but they're not putting this car in Le Mans, man. So anyway, this is an article from Audio Express, and the headline is General Motors introduces Dolby Atmos across its entire 2026 EV lineup. I think the original headline there was GM adds Dolby Atmos to entire Cadillac line. But yeah, all of the pictures are Cadillac. So we're going to talk about that. The question that you posed in the idea board was, does it matter? Does Atmos matter? Does Cadillac matter? And we'll touch on all 3 of those things and give our opinions. But what drew you in? Like, why'd you put this in the idea board, man? Is it just topical, or
part of it's maybe because I used to work for Dolby, and we were just starting our car program, which they kind of killed a little after I left, and kind of at the whim of a VP of something or another. I don't know if it was the right whim or the wrong whim, but It was kind of fun to go try to promote that at least. So I enjoyed it, whatever. But I'm kind of, is this a big win that, that more cars are going to have Atmos? I don't know how many do right now, to tell you the truth. And I'm kind of pondering, Atmos has been around a long time now. And does it matter? I don't know. I mean, when did Apple start slamming this stuff at us? 5 years ago?
That's a good point.
6 years ago? 7 years ago?
Has it really been that long since Apple jumped on the Atmos train? I don't remember.
I was living in LA, and it was before the pandemic.
Because I didn't really, none of that mattered to me until I got my first pair of AirPods, right? Because you got to have, to enjoy Atmos with headphones with Apple Music on an iPhone, you've got to have one of either the AirPods or Beats. So none of my previous headphones would work with it. So I didn't care about it until then. I mean, other than academically, I guess, but it wasn't high on my radar. Yeah.
I take it back. 2021, May 17, 2021. So I guess it was during the pandemic. I just remember walking around my block in LA listening to spatial audio on those big, giant, bulky Apple headphones, the iMax Pro or whatever it is, iMax Max. What is it called?
AirPods Max Pro,
whatever.
I think.
God. Random assemblage of names. And I remember listening to that and working with Lauren Dragon from Wirecutter on something we wrote about it. But so it's been kicking around for, we're at 4 years now, a good solid 4 years. And it had been around for a good solid 4 years before that, I'm sure. So, I think I wrote about that for Sound of Vision. Oh, boy, a long time ago.
Wow.
So we're going to examine that in depth with our incomparable insight and expertise.
Oh boy, that's pressure. Well, anyway, what are we going to talk about for patrons this week?
Patrons, we're going to dig into my favorite subject, one of my favorite subjects, impedance. And I found this thing on John Darko's website, how to add tubes to any DAC streamer or CD player for 499 euros, which I think is like $499 nowadays or something. And, Musical Fidelity is apparently introducing a new, tube buffer stage, basically, where you plug audio into it and it goes through some tubes and comes out the back end. And there's a lot of claims made in this by Musical Fidelity, which is now owned by Heinz Lichtenegger, who's like the project guy. And I wanted to address this because there's a lot of misleading information in here. There's a lot of stuff in here that's, in my experience, just wrong, just flat out wrong. And I'm as we're going to talk about, I'm just getting really PO'd about the high-end audio industry for just making preposterous, stupid, false claims.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about that. I'm going to get mad, probably.
Brent smash.
Yeah.
Anyway, before we get to all that, let's talk about Sonos, buddy. So we've got this article from TED. Again, if you guys really care about the business end of the audio industry, you really need to be reading Strategy because Ted's on top of it, man. And not a lot of editorializing here. Yeah. When he gets into opinion stuff, he is largely reporting other people's opinions, but I mean, he's really digging deep into the way the business works. I mean, Ted is the guy who will go read patents and stuff to break news. So it's a great site, but this one is I guess backing up for people who don't know. Sonos has been having a good bit of trouble for the past year or so. We talked about this previously. They put out a new app, and that kind of broke everything. And they thought, well, okay, we'll just, patch it all back and it'll be hunky-dory and people will be happy and we'll be right back where we were. But they really, really lost the trust of a large part of their customers. And they haven't recovered from it yet. So that's what this article is digging to. Are they on the right track? Are they not? Anyway, I've babbled enough. What do you think about it?
Well, they are still at their nadir. They have not recovered, as far as I know, as far as I can perceive. They have not recovered in any way, and they just lost so much with that app thing. And I have to think that, there must have been some dissatisfaction going into this for people to. I think people have to start, the seeds of dissatisfaction have to be there. And then something provokes people into real, outward, outspoken dissatisfaction. And
well, can I speak to that a little?
Sure.
You're
the reviewer. You're the expert.
I maintain the guide to wireless multi-room audio systems for Wirecutter. And I, in conjunction with my editors there, made the decision when the whole app thing hit, okay, I can't in good conscience recommend Sonos anymore. But I do a lot of testing on this guide, and also I do a lot of day-to-day just using the stuff, because a lot of this stuff is, with its lifestyle-y stuff, you learn a lot more from using the stuff every day than you would, using it for a month in the course of a review. But honestly, every time I would go to do an update to this guide, I would have to relearn how to use Sonos, because day-to-day, I just don't use the app. And I just AirPlay to the speakers, right? And then, it's time to, do an update, talk about what Sonos has been doing, talk about the app experience. And I would have to relearn how to do everything. You shouldn't have to relearn how to send music from an app to a speaker, right? That should be intuitive. How do I add zones? How do I remove zones? I mean, it is such a simple process that it's baked into the OS of Apple devices, right? Yeah. I mean, AirPlay is you could hand an AirPlay device to anyone and go, make music go out of this speaker and this speaker, and they could figure it out in about 5 seconds. With Sonos, man, it's just like every time you open the app, it's you feel like Dory. So you're right. There was that dissatisfaction in that. And I think that was a large part of the problem. They've said there was a lot of, some sort of debt. I can't remember the exact term, but basically they had for so long been spackling over the cracks in the app, just trying to keep things working, that it was a spackled together mess. And that was why they had to break it and start over. But what they should have done is spent a lot of time in development. But investors said, hey, you guys have been promising headphones. The headphones have got to come out now. They needed this new app to integrate the headphones in. So they decided, the investors are our real customers, so we got to do what they say, and it broke everything. But you're right. The dissatisfaction had been there for a long time, I think. So
we should talk about Pinewood, which was that was the code name for they were planning to launch a set-top streamer, like an Apple TV sort of thing, this year. And I'm going to assume that they're, how do you beat Apple and Roku or Amazon in that business with a lot fewer resources and, a lot fewer resources than Apple and Amazon. I don't know about Roku, but Roku does I think a hell of a job for a not humongous company. Anyway, I imagine what they were going to do is they were going to add, Sonos ecosystem stuff to it. So you could plug this thing into your TV or soundbar or whatever, and then you could have the TV or soundbar be part of your Sonos ecosystem, which maybe cool or kind of not. I don't know how many people want to play music through their soundbar. I mean, I do once in a great while, but not that often. And I, review soundbars. But not that it's a bad idea. Some of these soundbars are pretty good with music. I mean, and they have a subwoofer, most of them. So it's like, this is not a bad music system, but I just don't think people do that just because it doesn't occur to them to do that. And so I'm not sure how excited people would be about that. And then, of course, for them to make a set-top box with a user experience that's as good as what Apple or Roku can deliver, boy, good luck on that. That's really tough. So I question how relevant Wi-Fi audio is nowadays because it's complicated to set up. And, relative to Bluetooth, Bluetooth Auracast is starting to happen now. A lot of the new Bluetooth speakers have it. An increasing number of earphones, have it, headphones. An increasing number of hearing aids have it. And, with Auracast, you can have one source and it broadcasts out to an unlimited number of sync devices, right? Which is, your headphones or your Bluetooth speakers or whatever. And, if you can have an Auracast transmitter that's pretty strong, you could just plop that somewhere in your house and, sync your phone to it and then broadcast out to any number of Bluetooth speakers, right?
Yeah.
At a much lower cost and probably a lot less complexity. I'm just guessing. Now, I've only gotten Auracast to work in one device, and that was a set of earphones. I have some new JBL speakers with Auracast that I was trying to figure out how to get my Auracast transmitter to work. It's an early one. It has like an app, and I can't find the app stuff, and I can't. It's some weird brand, Floogoo. Floogoo. And I actually got it working. It was kind of cool, but now I can't figure out how to get it working again. But anyway, we may be a ways away from Auracast being, we may be 2 years away from Auracast really having it, being fully developed and ready for the real world. But I just kind of think that there's better solutions out there. And I abandoned Wi-Fi. I was thrilled with Wi-Fi audio 20 years ago, but I abandoned it because it just got so complicated. It was so easy for me to hook up a Bluetooth speaker.
It's so funny, our different experiences with that, because I really think it comes down to the fact that you are primarily an Android person with regard to mobile devices, and I am primarily an Apple person with regard to mobile devices.
Yeah.
AirPlay just stinking works, man. And it's just easy. There's no real setup. It is, if the thing is on the network, it is an AirPlay device. In all of the devices that I've tested in the past year or so, there was one Sony AVR that I tested for Wirecutter Guide to AVRs that I had, like, sometimes I would pull up my AirPlay list and it wouldn't be on there, right? And that was one of the reasons that it didn't make it as a pick, because it's like, come on, man, if you can't get AirPlay right, there is something drastically wrong here. I'm testing out a new Anthem mini slim AVR in the bedroom right now, and it's just so nice to be able to, like, my wife and I sleep listening to thunderstorm sounds. It's so nice to just, at night, AirPlay to the surround sound system in our bedroom and listen to thunderstorms in surround sound instead of coming out of a little wireless speaker. But yeah, I mean, I wonder if Apple people and Android people, as a rule, have this much disagreement on the matter, or if it's just me and you and our weird quirks. But I think Wi-Fi audio is great as long as it's AirPlay.
Well, I mean, you're indulging in the well-established tradition of audio writers of thinking that their extremely peculiar use case is of interest to anybody but them. But
you think using AirPlay is an extremely peculiar use case?
To play thunderstorm sounds in surround?
Well, that was just one example, but I'm saying overall, it's just AirPlay just works, man. It just works.
It does work. Look, I have used it a lot, and it does work. It works fine. I just don't, I don't really see the need for it that much, especially because people are, I don't think people are playing music all around the house the way that maybe they would have 20 years ago. Okay. When everyone has their own phone and everyone wants to listen to what's on their phone, and they can hook up to Bluetooth, or they can hook up to, their headphones or their Bluetooth speaker, and everybody has their own Bluetooth speaker now. And why then do you really need the multi-room sound? Does anybody really want to listen to the multi-room sound?
More often than not, it's when Bethany wants to listen to one of her records, and we've only got one turntable, and it's in my office, 2-channel listening room, whatever. So when she wants to drop the needle on one of her records, well, she'll basically distribute it to the rest of the house through Blue OS or Blue OS or whatever you want to call it, because we've got Blue OS around the house, and there's a speaker in her office, and then we've got stuff in the media room. So we do that, but we otherwise for the multi-room audio stuff, it's mostly not us. It's me in the morning, sort of wanting to make sure that my music follows me wherever I go as I'm doing my morning routine, but. Yeah, I don't know how normal people do things. I think the use case is starting to fall apart for Wi-Fi audio. Okay, yeah,
because of greater pursuit of individual whatever.
Yeah. And also, I mean, I think people are getting tired of being locked into ecosystems. I mean, I think that's one of the biggest. Sonos has to. If they're going to succeed, they have to build back a lot of trust, but they are starting from a deficit because people are like, well, look, I can use these things with AirPlay. Well, I can use other speakers with AirPlay too. Why do I have to add a Sonos speaker? And if I've got a mix and match system, then I don't have to worry about their stupid apps. So I don't know. I don't know if they can crawl back from this one, but it'll be interesting to see them try.
Let's move on, shall we? Let's move on to the DAC scam.
Let's do it, because we got a lot to say about this one, man.
We have a lot to say.
All right, we'll be right back.
This podcast is called Audio
Unleashed.
And this segment is about the DAC scam. Almost everyone believes the hype. Or so says AP Mastering. Does this dude have a name?
I think it's Alain Paul. Alain.
Okay.
Am I pronouncing that right? Alain.
Alain.
Yeah, Alain Paul. Yeah.
It's the French version of Alan, except he's British. So he has a lot of internal conflicts already. And
nice.
Which we'll discuss some of his conflicts. But in this guy, like something really rubs me wrong about this guy. You know how much I just can't stand people that are absolutely sure of themselves.
Yeah.
He is just always 100% sure of himself. And he gets out over his skis a lot of times. But in this case, he is right on top of his skis and hauling ass down the hill at 60 miles an hour in full control. So he's talking about how, he wants to get in there and he's saying that DACs don't really make a difference. And he actually has, he puts together a blind test of how, of whether or not you can tell the difference between different DACs. And I got to say, this has been a subject in high-end audio for a while. And even like, John Darko, who we'll be talking about in a little bit. John Darko is saying, we'll be talking about the Patreon segment. John Darko a while ago said, DACs, it's not that big a deal. And I think Stephen Stone has basically kind of said similar things, like when you do really careful level matching and you get out 4 computers and start setting up multiple, start doing actual DAC testing the way it should be done instead of plugging one in, then plugging another one in. And not doing a fast switch and not level matching, et cetera, et cetera. He says, once you have really close testing on this thing, there's not a big difference. And this is what we found at Wirecutter too. We tested headphone amp DACs, and I did really meticulous testing. Maybe we can put a link into that. And we had about 10 of these things and, ranging in price from probably $50 to $300. And, boy, you could hear very tiny differences. We had multiple listeners and, all people that were in audio. And, you could kind of hear a difference, but you couldn't really nail it down. You couldn't develop a consistent preference for one or the other, really. And what differences there were insignificant, I think. And we got to point out, look,
almost always above 10 kilohertz. It's like when I've heard differences between DACs when I'm doing, I can't really do blind A/B, but when doing more controlled testing and listening, it's you can hear a difference in the reconstruction filter if they use different types of reconstruction filter. But even the most heavy-handed, slow roll-off reconstruction filters that I know of, like don't do anything below 10K. So yeah,
and that's one thing he talks about in here is that people use different filters, but like, what do these filters cost? It doesn't really, why is a DAC $20,000 because it uses some filter? I mean, these filters don't really cost anything to implement. And a lot of DACs have multiple, even some of these little headphone DACs I'm testing for like $50, $60, $100, whatever, have your choice of multiple filters in there. And
it's basically a one-band EQ. Pretty much.
Yeah.
It's just a low pass filter.
Right. It's not a big deal. And they have different, slopes and everything and different, points. But the whole point of this is, and I will say I disagree with him on some level here. And that's that, okay, look, I was looking at like I get all kind of ads thrown at me from high-end audio people. And there was like a Jadi DAC. I was like, I'll go see what that thing is and look at it. And, it's got tube output stages. I'm sure it sounds fine. And, I would guess, if you compared it to some cheap solid-state DAC, it might sound better. It might sound worse. I don't know. It might sound a little bit different. It looks cool. It's like $20,000, $10,000. It's a lot of money. And, if people want to go spend their money on fancy stuff, well, I guess that's their business. But, that's the whole point that he's making is like, you can't take that DAC and shoot it out against a generic, company like Topping or something like that, that makes maybe $100 DAC. And you can't establish a clear listener preference for one or the other.
Yeah.
As you can with loudspeakers and headphones, because you can do blind tests of loudspeakers and bam, bam, bam. It is very easy to distinguish among them consistently and reliably and develop consistent opinions that are consistent across a wide range of people. And Harman has proved that over and over again.
Yeah. Real quick, can we talk about his methodology in this test?
Sure,
because you and I often talk about the fact that, you did a study, but what's your methodology? I thought his methodology was really sound here. And basically it is this. He took a digital music stream, right? And and then ran it through a reasonably inexpensive mastering DAC, and then ran that into a really cheap analog to digital converter and back in. And then so he's got the original file, and then he's got a file that has been run through a basic DAC and a really cheap ADC. And he switches back and forth between them. And he says simply, I don't want you to tell me which one is better. I don't want you to tell me which one is which. I simply want you to tell me how many times I switch between them. And because of that, and because of the number of responses that he got, I think he said he cut it off at 1,300, pretty close, gave him a really, really good p-value. And it was basically, the question is this: how many times did I switch back and forth? I have to, now also, he didn't rely simply on the YouTube compression. He put in the show notes a WAV file that you could download, right? And listen to it. I don't know, I think that was a really smart way to go about it because he left a lot of potential variables on the floor and made them irrelevant. It was simply, can you hear the difference between using your DAC at home, whatever you want to do, between the original digital stream and a digital stream run through a cheap DAC through a cheap ADC and then redigitized. Can you tell when I'm switching between them? And I think he said in the end he switched between them 7 times. And
I think so, yeah.
Most people were like, you didn't switch at all. And then like the next was like, you switched 1 time. Honestly, listening to it, Brent, my response was, I thought he switched twice because I could have sworn that there were 2 points where I could hear the character of the very high frequencies above 10K change. Turns out I was probably making that up, but 7 times and like if you look at it, there's no bump in his graph. There's no bump at 7, so it's basically just noise. So yeah, I thought that was really good. That was a way to go about it.
I listened to it. I was kind of like, it's pointless to think this is significant. It's like, okay, I guess he's switching, but like, I can't tell how many times, and the sonic differences are not significant. Yeah. And, there's a lot of high-end audio publications and probably high-end audio guys on YouTube or whatever that will tell you, oh, it's so significant. It's musically profound, all this crap. And it's just not. It's like, if you think this is musically profound, you don't understand music.
Yeah.
It's just wrong. Yeah. It's ridiculous. This is why I just, the older I get, the less patience I have for this stuff, because I'm glad he did this and he did a good job. Yeah. And he's right. But this doesn't mean there's not going to be a bunch of new, $20, $30, $40, $50,000 DACs that come out this year. Because what else are these people going to do? That's what they do. Yeah. And, the high-end audio industry, I think, as we're going to talk about in the Patreon segment, when I go over the top, the high-end audio industry has started to really rely on sonically insignificant things because, they know they can get people to vouch for what they're doing, people that really don't understand audio engineering and also don't understand music as an art form. These are differences that are akin to drinking wine from 2 different brands of glasses that are the same exact shape. And it's like, can you tell the difference in a blind test? No. Yeah. Does your preference for one or the other really matter? No. So I get really tired of all this kind of stuff. And I'm really happy that some people are speaking out against this and starting to say, you know what? There are things in audio that just don't matter.
I do wish that he reserved more of his ire for the people creating and marketing these devices and less. I wish he would take it a little easier on the people who buy that gear, who bought the scam, because he's very into calling them stupid. And it's like, are you being helpful, buddy? Because I'm sorry, you tell anybody they're being stupid, they're going to stop listening to you.
I mean, and also I hesitate to call it a scam because look, I mean, I can, we use USB interfaces. We're using them right now. And I can buy USB interfaces that work absolutely fine for $79 from M Audio. They work fine. They have almost the same features as the $200 one from, Focusrite or Motu or whoever, right? You can do a very good album with any of these things. And yet some of them you can buy, 2-channel USB interfaces for $300, $400. You can buy a Rupert Neve one for like $1,000. And does it really sound better? It might sound a little different because it's transformer coupled, but is it better? I don't know, but it looks cool and you feel good about buying it. I mean, I buy fancy stuff sometimes because I like it better and I can afford it.
I'm a sucker for a good volume control. I will pay more for a volume control that feels good in my hand.
It doesn't have to be demonstrably better to be something that someone wants to spend money for. Would you rather have, I would way rather have a cool integrated tube amp than an NAD solid state amp that works perfectly fine.
I'd rather have an NAD with VU meters in it than anything with tubes. Like for me, it's VU meters or get the heck out, you know?
You ever seen the tube VU meters that have like the glowing green stuff in them?
Oh, yeah, no.
The glow is kind of turquoise color. It looks like toothpaste, but it looks like a radioactive toothpaste.
Yeah, no. I want a bouncing needle, buddy, because that makes things sound good.
You are so wrong. You're so deeply wrong.
Oh, well, you know, he talks about the psychological test, like with I forget the name of it, but like you show somebody going, buh, 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 buh.
Oh, yeah.
And then you change it and sub in the video of them making an F sound. And all of the sudden you hear them saying, fa, fa, fa,
Yeah.
even though the audio hasn't changed. I mean, your visual perception can change the way you hear things. I've talked before about lighting levels and how that affects my perception of, you know, music fidelity and things like that. So but you and I always talk about how your eyes can mislead your ears, but
Sure.
that, look, if you do it intentionally, like I know I enjoy listening to music more when I see a little needle bouncing. I was very much tongue in cheek when I claimed that actually affected the sound quality, but it does affect my perception of the sound quality. Right. I know that. So I guess what I'm saying is, dear listener, if you read any of my reviews and it is of a product with VU meters, maybe scrutinize the text a little bit, because I've already told you that will influence my perception of the sound. So
yeah. But I don't agree that people that buy high-end audios are stupid. You know, it's a luxury product.
Yeah.
I think that the reviewers who rave about some DAC versus another DAC in uncontrolled testing, are they incurious? Yeah, probably. Are they conforming to a certain culture? Absolutely. You know, it has, but none of it has anything to do with music. None of it has the slightest thing to do with music. And there's a lot of these high-end audio companies that really, oh God, I found one the other day that was just really so annoying. Because I go, you know, in my idle moments, like if I'm in a boring meeting that's going nowhere, I'll just start browsing the web and look at audio stuff, right? And every time I do, I'm like, why did I do this? But I just keep doing it out of curiosity, just to see what people are doing, man. And that's how I found that CD player on Amazon for $50, where it looks like a turntable and you put the CD on it, and it has a little tone arm, and you move the tone arm over the CD to start it playing. Yeah, I found that, and that was totally awesome.
That was so cool. Yeah.
Can I just throw some verbiage at you here?
Throw verbiage, baby.
I found this on PBN Audio. It's a guy who makes some big, giant box speakers. Very conventional, big, giant box speakers, very conventional amplifiers and stuff. And of course, he claims they're just the greatest thing ever. I saw this verbiage and I thought this was hilarious. Consider this amplifier your ultimate audio destiny, for you will hear what you've never heard. The holy grail of audio nirvana. Totally mixing two different religions there.
No kidding. And also not understanding what nirvana actually means.
I know. It's nothingness. Right?
Yeah. It's an end to the cycle of rebirth.
But this is a Class AB amplifier. It sounds like every other competently designed Class AB amplifier. I'm sure it works fine, but you know, in order to sell this thing for whatever he's selling it for, I don't know what he's selling it for, and I don't care. And these people like act like they're some sort of artists or they're some kind of just grand wizards of audio. But this proves that they're not, because if they really think this Class AB amp is so significantly better, so more musically profound than some other Class AB amp, they don't understand music.
Yeah.
Because music just doesn't rely on incredibly tiny little differences between amplifiers. It was mixed on speakers with built-in amplifiers anyway.
Ooh, that's a good segue to another video that he did about pro audio monitors are all crap. Use these instead. To be fair, you put this in the idea board, so I'm going to give you credit where credit is due because I had not watched this video. But wow, this is proof that being very, very right about one thing does not make you right about everything.
I just really kind of did this for you because I wanted to, because we get into praising some of these guys sometimes, and like this guy's kind of like Danny Ritchie, like he's like, oh, he's so right, he's so right, he's so right. Oh no, he's way off on that. And this is like that. He's basically saying it's really not just pro monitors. It's like any speaker with a port. Sucks and has bass distortion and all this kind of stuff. Any speaker with a passive radiator sucks and has bass distortion and all this stuff. And he's saying there's all this phase shift in the bass, which there is, but can you hear it? You know, where's he's making all these claims about this bass distortion and all this phase distortion and all this stuff in the bass. And he says that you have to have like big giant speakers to properly reproduce bass. And any speaker that doesn't sucks, which basically he's condemning 99.9% of the entire speaker industry. And basically saying, none of these monitor speakers work. Basically, almost no professional monitor speakers work unless they are absolutely gigantic, which almost none of them are. And he presents no proof, no scientific evidence, no measurements, no listening tests, no nothing. And, you know, if people are making these big claims and not presenting listening tests or not presenting measurements or something, maybe they're not liars, but they're too much in love with their own opinions.
Yeah, I would say you can just dismiss what they're saying, you know? I mean, I think there's one difference between the whole DAC issue and the whole monitor issue. Like, he's not trying to sell a DAC, where he is trying to sell a sort of a DIY speaker kit. So all of a sudden his methodology becomes very, very different. You know? I'm not saying I know that has anything to do with it, but it's certainly suspicious that, you know, his methodology is very good when he doesn't have something to sell and gets a little dodgy around in the middle when he does have something to sell. So that might be worth taking into account.
And it's like, all that matters about the speaker is, you know, that it be gigantic. And I don't disagree that, like, I prefer big subwoofers with a port and stuff, you know, what I call naturally aspirated subwoofers.
Nice.
To the Sunfire style ones where they put like a really super high excursion driver and a 1,000-watt amp on it, which works, but I don't think the fidelity of the bass is quite there. But for the purposes of mastering, I mean, hey, look, man, I did my album on little JBL, what are they, 305p speakers with a 5.25-inch woofer and ports. And I sent them to, I sent it to a mastering guy, and he made only subtle changes to it. And a very well-established mastering guy, a guy who's way more established than Elaine, whatever his name is. Just show me the evidence. You know, every claim in audio, you should say, show me the evidence.
Yeah.
Every single claim people make in audio, show me the evidence.
Except if it comes to VU meters, then you don't need evidence. You should just listen to me.
No, you are wrong because you never experienced the glowing toothpaste tube ones.
That's a good point.
They are really cool. They're very hard to find, but they're really cool.
All right. Anyway, I'm going to go get some water, and we'll be right back.
Yeah.
Welcome back. This is Audio
Unleashed.
And this time around, we're talking about Atmos in cars. Exciting. So I've seen Dr. Sean Olive posting a lot about this. He's been talking about Atmos in cars a lot lately on Facebook and maybe on LinkedIn. So I guess maybe that's why it's been on my radar. But you know what? I'm not the one who put this in the idea board. You did. But this is a story from Audio Express that we're talking about. And I guess the original headline was GM adds Dolby Atmos to entire Cadillac line. Currently, the headline is General Motors introduces Dolby Atmos across its entire 2026 EV lineup. EV being electric vehicle for people who aren't hip to the modern lingo. So anyway, this will include the 2026 Escalade IQL, Escalade IQ, the Lyric V, Optique, Vistique, and more. I don't even know what some of those are, but apparently they're all Cadillac EVs. Most of them crossovers. But so they're adding Dolby Atmos capabilities. As I understand it from something I was reading, basically it was only compatible with Amazon Music, I think, and this implementation didn't work with Apple Music. I may be remembering that wrong.
That'd be a mistake.
Or that may have been something that came from Dr. Olive's Facebook post. I don't remember. But, you know, all of this implementation, it kind of depends on who's doing it, who built the head end, what, contracts they have with which providers. I know there's some of the stuff that supports Apple only supports it via wired connection, and some of it only supports it via wireless connection. So, to a point that you've made many, many times, looking and seeing that something supports Dolby Atmos doesn't really mean much, because how does it support it? How do you get it? What is it actually doing? It's a little confusing.
Yeah, Dolby licenses the Atmos name to everything from 2.0 channel cheap sound bars up to, really, really, really expensive audio gear. So it doesn't necessarily mean all that much. Yeah. And then, of course, anytime you listen to Dolby Atmos in headphones, it's two speakers with a virtualizer. And I'm looking at this, and it's a little unclear to me exactly what's going on, because they're talking about how General Motors is going all in and expanding Dolby Atmos across its entire 2026 EV lineup. And I can't figure out if that just means Cadillac or if that means all GM EVs.
Yeah.
I don't know. Here's my question, though. I mean, Atmos has been kicking around for a long time. And I can't remember when it was introduced. I do remember going to the introduction, and it was impressive. But I think I was writing for Sound and Vision back then.
Yeah.
And then Apple picked it up in 2021, as we were saying before. And that kind of gave it a lot of extra kick. And that's when it really started to get a lot of attention in the pro audio world, which we monitor, of course, by reading Tape Op magazine.
Yeah.
This has been kicking around for a long, long time.
Yeah.
They're saying it's a survey from Dolby, which, take that for what it's worth, found that nearly 90% of music streaming subscribers agreed enhanced audio quality is a must-have feature, which I really doubt that. I mean, you can always say, would you like to have enhanced audio quality? Oh, sure.
Yeah, right. Who would say no to that? By the way, I found the press release. This is coming from Dr. Olive. He didn't post the Audio Express news story. He posted the original GM.com press release. So we'll add this to the show notes. But yes, the actual headline for the press release is GM brings Dolby Atmos with Amazon Music to Cadillac EV lineup. So they're not doing Apple Music. It is only Amazon Music that is getting the Dolby Atmos treatment.
That's a mistake.
And it is only via USB connectivity.
Only via USB?
Only via USB. Yep.
I haven't been on Amazon Music in a while, but the interface and the user experience was just always horrible compared to...
It has not gotten any better. It is awful, buddy. Yeah.
Compared to Spotify or Apple Music or Qobuz, which are all fine to me. And... Okay, so they're saying, though, as 93% of Billboard's 2024 top 100 artists are releasing music in Dolby Atmos, The car is becoming a natural environment, blah, 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 blah. Now, I will agree that a car, and we used to say this when I worked at Dolby all the time, it's like, well, you've already got front and rear speakers in pretty much every car now. And this is from 25 years ago. You've already got front and rear speakers in almost every car. Just add a center speaker and you're dialed in. And if you want to resist that, well, just remember every car used to have a center speaker back when all cars had just an AM radio.
I was about to say, I was saving that little anecdote because like my first car was a 1978 Camaro and it had 3 speakers across the dash and 2 in the back. And it's like when I was first exposed to home theater and they're talking about the center speaker concept, my first thought was, oh, it's kind of like old cars. Because with my old Camaro, it would basically take anything that was centered in the image and put it in that dash center channel. So you didn't run into the issues that you run into today with balance, especially if you like listen to Jimi Hendrix in the car, it's way off. The person on one side of the car gets a radically different experience from the person on the other side of the car. But yeah, I'd say if nothing else, bring Atmos to cars just to bring the center channel back, man, because I think it's a real good idea.
You know, in the car, you know where everybody is, and you can very easily make modes that are like, okay, driver only, or, you know, driver and front seat passenger, whatever. And you can optimize the sound for whoever you want. You can optimize the spatial audio experience. So cars are actually a good environment for this. Arguably one of the better possible environments other than a full-blown home theater system, which nobody has anymore. So, you know, I don't disagree with that at all. However, when they're saying 93% of Billboard's 2024 top 100 artists are releasing music in Dolby Atmos, what does it mean?
And how many of them even know that they are?
How many of them know? Yeah, that's a good point. And how many of them care? That's another point. And, you know, how much music do they have in Dolby Atmos? Do they have a couple token releases in there? I mean, I think I mixed some of my stuff in Atmos. Did I? I can't remember. I did a lot of Atmos stuff for that Chesky project I did.
Right. Yeah, and I think you used some of your music for testing on that. And I know you did some tests with our podcast intro as well, because I give you all of the vocals stems from that.
That's right. So I've released, and I know for sure we have put out some Atmos stuff for the podcast music, because I did it just for the hell of it, just to show I could. And so I have released Siger and Butterworth, the artist, the jazz artist, of which I am half. Has released music in Dolby Atmos. But what does it mean? I mean, Ron, who's the other half, doesn't even know. Nor would he care if I told him. And it's like, well, what does that really mean? And okay, Billboard's top 100 artists. How many of those artists do I listen to personally? And how many artists do typical audiophiles listen to? Yeah. Probably close to 0, a lot closer to 0 than to 100. Although, I have a gig tomorrow night and I am playing Good Luck Babe by Chappell Roan.
Oh, nice.
Along with Toxic by Britney Spears. And best of all, Footloose.
Oh, wow.
I never thought I'd be learning that. Anyway, so diversion there. But I don't know how much all this means. And the fact that, music works fine in stereo. I hate to be the guy who's saying that and giving in to Steve Guttenberg after decades of arguing with him. But music works fine in stereo, and in a car where you don't really know what you're hearing anyway. I mean, how are they processing the sound in the car to sound its best? I have a Bose stereo system in my car, right? Which means that Bose engineers in Detroit, who, because all these companies have like a Detroit shop, and this is a Chevrolet car. Bose engineers in Detroit messed around with the sound until they thought it sounded the most awesome, basically. And how much did they pipe into the back? Did they do any kind of matrixing or virtualizing in there? I don't know. I don't care, because actually the system sounds good. So I don't know how much people will really notice the difference if they're playing stuff in Atmos, and if they're having to plug in their phone through USB into the car. None of them are going to do it anyway.
Well, I wouldn't say none. I mean, I like to plug in my phone via USB just because it keeps it charged,
Okay, so you, Dr. Sean Olive,
That's good company, sir. That is good company.
I don't know how many other people are going to do that because they're so used to Bluetooth. Can you do Atmos over Bluetooth? I guess you can. On some level.
No, I know. Well, I'll say this: like one of the things that Sonos has done to try to win people back is like we can do Atmos over AirPlay now. So and it wasn't it for like Apple did this thing where they opened up the possibility, but it's been added like a product at a time, and it hasn't come to everybody yet. But like Sonos's Atmos wireless speaker was one of the first products to get it. So I don't know if you could, I don't know if there's any reason it would be technically more difficult. It's just if they're controlling the connection, they might not allow it. You know what I mean? So
yeah, and Bluetooth should have the bandwidth to do Dolby Atmos at some reasonable level of quality, because Dolby Atmos is, there is a quasi AAC. I think maybe it's not quasi AAC, maybe, I can't remember, but they're doing basically like an AAC type of thing in there already as an option. You can do it full bandwidth, you can do uncompressed, you can do compressed, you can do whatever you want. And
the EAC4 or EAC3 and then AAC4 now is their Dolby's new codec. But it's what the streaming services use. That's basically AAC. Yeah.
So technically, it should be possible to do it in Bluetooth. I don't think anybody is. This seemed to me like, wow, Dolby Atmos is really finally getting some attention from the car manufacturers. But now I'm looking at this going like, nobody's going to care. And GM's going to look at this and go like, what are we paying in licensing? Well, they may be paying nothing. Dolby might have given it to them for free to get it in there. So, I don't know. Is GM going to look at this and go like, yeah, this is really pulling customers into the door? I don't think so.
Well, hey, you threw some verbiage at me earlier. I'm going to throw some verbiage at you. The last line of the press release. With Dolby Atmos on Apple Music and Cadillac's technology, buckle up, turn it up, and experience sound like never before. How's that for a tagline, dude?
Well, what I want to, it maybe sound like never before, but Dennis, are you finally hearing what the artist intended?
Maybe if the artist is
so much crap.
I don't know. I don't even know what I was about to say.
Oh my God. At least as AI takes over our jobs, the writing will probably only get better.
Yeah. Although right after that, it does say USB not compatible with all devices. So I guess that's the fine print.
Oh, God. All right. I think this is a nothing burger. This is a nothing burger. Is this our last segment? Are we done?
Well, we got to do credits, and then we've got to do our Patreon segment, man. We got to pay the bills. Yeah. We got to feed the people who feed us. So.
It's a Butterburger production.
God, I'm so 2 weeks
just rolls off the tongue now. I've developed virtuosity in saying Butterburger.
That's great because, I don't know, man. I think you're allergic to consistency. So anytime
it's effortless.
Yeah, there you go. I'm not gonna have any new beats for you this week, buddy. I'm sorry. I've been kind of slammed and kind of
What if I send you beats and you put stuff over on them? I could do that.
Oh, okay, sure. Let's try that
if you want.
Maybe.
All right.
If I have time. Yeah. And
well, so anyway, if you hear something maybe new, the same old stuff. I don't know. Yeah. Whatever. Yeah. Something. We did it.
Yeah. Well, you're editing and mixing, mastering, and all of that this episode.
I guess so.
You'll be the one to make that decision, I guess.
Yeah.
Anything else? Any other credits we need to do? Anybody else we need to give a shout out to?
Nope. Just a thanks to all of our listeners who make all of this worthwhile.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, everybody, thanks for joining us as always, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks. But patrons, stick around. We got one more for you.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye. Hey, thanks for sticking around to the end. If you liked what you heard and wish there'd been a little bit more of it, we got some good news for you.
Indeed, we do. If you check out patreon.com/Audio Unleashed, all one word, you can get new episodes a little earlier than everybody else.
And sometimes it's like a day or two early. Sometimes it's nearly a week. We never really know until we start editing.
But the big plus is that you get extended cuts of every episode. And usually that's going to mean a whole extra segment that's about maybe a geekier topic or something that's a little more personal to us or something that's just going to really appeal to the hardcore Audio Unleashed listener.
Yeah, what it boils down to is if you're somebody who would support Audio Unleashed on Patreon, we're going to make sure the bonuses to every episode are really aimed straight at your interests.
Yeah, and so if you want to hear these segments, you can subscribe to our Patreon for $3 a month, which is less than I spend every single day on my cup of coffee when I go to Starbucks to write my boring articles.
Yeah. One more time with that URL, that's patreon.com/Audio Unleashed.
Or Audio
Unleashed. Yeah. Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.